I was sitting at a family picnic when my mom looked right at me and said, "Next time, don't bring the kid." Nobody spoke up. Not one person defended my son. And then my oldest daughter slowly pushed her chair back and said, "Say that again." The entire table fell completely silent. Then my own mother repeated it. She told me not to bring my son to a family picnic. Her own grandson, 6 years old, missing his front teeth, completely obsessed with dinosaurs. And she stared at me across a bowl of potato salad and said it like it meant nothing. "Next time, don't bring the kid." Like he was some stray animal that wandered over from another yard. And nobody, no one, said anything. Not my dad, not my uncle, not my aunt. There were 23 adults sitting there, and the silence felt so heavy it was suffocating. And then my 13-year-old daughter Ava pushed her chair back. And what she said next? I swear to you I didn't teach her that, but I wish I had. My name is Melissa. I'm 34 years old. I live in Dayton, Ohio with my 2 kids, Ava, who's 13 going on 45, and my youngest, Ethan, who just turned 6. I work 3 days a week as a dental hygienist, and on weekends I take admin shifts at a walk-in clinic. I'm not wealthy, but I'm not struggling either. I live in that middle space where the bills get paid on time, but one unexpected expense can mess everything up. You know exactly what I mean. Before this makes any sense, you need to understand my family. My mom, Denise, has always needed to be the center of everything, not in a loud or dramatic way. She doesn't scream or throw things. She's quieter than that. She's the kind of person who smiles while saying something that makes you feel small inside. She'll compliment what you're wearing and then add, "It's bold of you to choose that." She'll tell you she's proud of you and then spend the next 40 minutes explaining how much better your cousin is doing. My dad, Richard, is the kind of man who figured out a long time ago that agreeing with Denise is easier than disagreeing with her. I don't even blame him anymore. He's been nodding along for 37 years of marriage. Honestly, I think he forgot he's even allowed to think for himself. But that's a whole different conversation. For years, literally years, I was the one holding this family together financially. Not huge amounts, but enough. When their furnace broke 2 winters ago, I sent $1,200. When my dad needed new tires and they were behind on insurance, me again. When my mom decided to celebrate her birthday at a steakhouse and then conveniently forgot her wallet. Take a guess. I never complained, not once, because that's what you do for family, right? At least, that's what I kept telling myself. You help because they're your people, and one day, when you need them, they'll show up for you. Except, they never did. The one time, just one, I asked my mom to watch Ethan for a weekend so I could take Ava to a volleyball tournament in Columbus. She said she was too tired. Ethan is the easiest kid in the world. He watches cartoons, eats whatever you give him, goes to bed at 8:30 without a fight. But she was too tired. And then I saw on Facebook that same weekend she hosted a card night with 6 friends and made 3 different dips. 3 dips, but too tired for her grandson. That hurt. But I swallowed it. I always swallowed it. Now let me tell you about my cousin Lauren. She's my mom's sister's daughter, and she lives about 40 minutes away in Springfield. Lauren and I have been close since we were kids. She's the only person in this family who ever looked me in the eye and said, "Melissa, you don't have to keep doing this." She saw everything. She saw how my mom treated me like a walking ATM, and she hated it. Lauren was my anchor. Every time I called her crying after something my mom said, she'd tell me, "Write it down. One day you'll need to remember why you stopped." I should have listened earlier. So, the picnic. It was 4th of July weekend. My Aunt Carol, Lauren's mom, organized a big family cookout at Eastwood Metro Park. Everyone was there. Uncles, aunts, cousins I hadn't seen since before the pandemic. Kids running everywhere, burgers grilling, someone playing old Motown through a speaker. For the first couple of hours, it was actually nice. Ethan was perfect. He played tag with Lauren's kids. He shared his juice box with a little girl he didn't even know. When he scraped his knee, he didn't cry. He just walked over and said, "Mom, I think I need a dinosaur Band-Aid. Tell me that's not adorable." But my mom had been watching him all afternoon with that look. You know the one, like she just tasted something sour. Every time he ran past her, she sighed. At one point, he accidentally bumped the table and knocked over a cup of lemonade. It didn't spill on anyone, just onto the grass. And she said, loud enough for people nearby to hear, "This is exactly why. This is exactly why." "What, Mom?" I let it go. I cleaned it up. I told Ethan to be careful. Then I sat back down. Then dinner started. We were all eating. Ethan sat next to Ava. He was fine, a little ketchup on his chin, swinging his legs under the table because the bench was too tall. But he's 6. That's normal. And then out of nowhere, my mom set her fork down, looked right at me, and with that same calm smile said, "Melissa, next time maybe don't bring the kid. It would be easier for everyone." The entire table went silent, like someone muted the world. My aunt looked down at her plate. My uncle suddenly got very interested in his corn. My dad took a sip of beer and stared at the sky like it held the answer to something important. And Ethan heard it. He's 6. He's not deaf. He looked up at me and whispered, "Mom, does Grandma not want me here? Do you understand what that does to a mother?" I opened my mouth. I was about to say something. I don't even know what. Probably something calm, something polite, something that would keep the peace. Because that's what I always did. Keep the peace, smile, fix things, pay for things. But before I could speak, Ava put her burger down. My 13-year-old daughter, who had been quietly eating and minding her business, wiped her hands, pushed her chair back, and stood up. She looked straight at my mom and said, "Say that again." No yelling, no anger, just calm, steady. She said it like she was daring her, and the whole table froze. My aunt's hand literally stopped halfway to her mouth. My mom looked at Ava like she couldn't believe what she just heard. Honestly, neither could I. My mom gave that dismissive little laugh and said, "Ava, sit down. This is an adult conversation." And Ava said, "Then stop acting like a child." I think my uncle actually choked on his corn when she said that. But here's where things didn't just end. Because my mom? She doesn't lose arguments, especially not to a 13-year-old. She didn't even look at Ava after that. She looked at me, and she said, "This is what happens when you don't teach your children respect." And I felt it. That same old feeling in my chest. That pull telling me to apologize, to smooth everything over, to reach for Ava's arm and say, "Sit down, honey," to protect the peace, even if it meant hurting myself. But something was different this time. Maybe it was Ethan's face. Maybe it was hearing my daughter say what I never had the courage to say in 34 years. Or maybe I was just finally exhausted. I looked at my mom and said, "Denise, he is your grandson. And if you can't treat him like family, then I don't see why I should keep treating you like mine." And then I stood up. I packed up my kids, grabbed the potato salad I brought, and what little dignity I had left, and I walked to the car. But let me tell you something. That moment, that was just the beginning. Because what happened in the weeks after that picnic, that's when everything really started to fall apart. And the decision I made next, some people in my family still haven't forgiven me for it. But I'll be honest with you, I would do it again tomorrow. So after the picnic, I drove home with my kids in the back seat, and my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Ava didn't say a word the whole ride. She just stared out the window. Ethan fell asleep, his mouth open, still holding his dinosaur toy. And me? I kept replaying my mom's voice in my head. "Next time, don't bring the kid." Over and over, like a song you hate but can't stop hearing. When we got home, I didn't even go inside right away. I sat in the driveway, engine off, windows down, listening to the crickets. And I thought to myself, how many times have I driven home from a family gathering feeling exactly like this? How many times have I pulled into this driveway with that same knot in my stomach? And the answer scared me, because it was every time, every single time. That night, after I got both kids into bed, I called Lauren. She picked up on the first ring. That alone tells you everything about her. I told her everything, every word, every look, every second of silence from that table. And when I finished, she said something I will never forget. She said, "Melissa, you've been giving everything to people who wouldn't even hand you a glass of water if you were on fire. When are you going to stop?" I sat there in my kitchen at 11 p.m., still smelling like sunscreen and charcoal. And I said, "Tonight. I'm done tonight." Now let me explain what done actually looked like. Because it wasn't dramatic. I didn't make a Facebook post. I didn't send a group message. I just stopped. Quietly. Completely. The first test came 9 days later. My mom called me. Not to apologize. Of course not. She called to tell me their water heater was making a strange noise, that my dad thought it might need to be replaced. And then she did what she always does. She didn't ask me directly. She said, "I don't know what we're going to do, Melissa. Your dad's only working part-time now, and my knees have been so bad, I can barely make it to the store. I just don't know." And then she went quiet. That heavy silence. The kind that's supposed to make you jump in and fix everything. Normally, I would have said, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of it." But this time, I said, "That sounds really stressful. I hope you figure it out." The silence on the other end was so long, I thought the call dropped. It didn't. She just didn't know what to do with a version of me that didn't open her wallet. 2 days later, she tried again. This time, it was the electric bill. Same tone, same sigh, same setup. And I gave her the same response. "That's tough, Mom. Maybe you can call the company and ask about a payment plan." I swear, I could almost hear her brain glitch through the phone. I'm not going to lie to you. Part of me felt awful. There was a part of me that wanted to just send the money and make everything easier. Because when you're the one who fixes everything, it becomes who you are. You don't even know yourself without it. But Lauren didn't let me slip. She texted me every single morning. Literally every morning. "Day 12 of choosing yourself. Keep going." Or, "You are not an ATM. You are not an ATM. You are not an ATM. That woman deserves a medal. And probably a vacation." And that's when the backlash started. Because once the money stopped, the phone calls began. But not from my mom. No. Denise doesn't fight her own battles when she can send others. First, it was my Aunt Susan. She left me a voicemail while I was at work. It was about 4 minutes long. Basically calling me selfish. Saying my parents were struggling. That family is supposed to help each other, and that she didn't raise me. But if she had, I'd know better. She didn't raise me. She's right about that. She also never helped raise me. Never paid for anything. Never babysat. Never showed up to a single school event. But sure, lecture me about family. Then it was my mom's friend, Carol, a woman I've maybe spoken to 6 times in my entire life. She called to say she heard I was abandoning my parents, and that I should think about what kind of example I'm setting for my kids. This is the same woman I once saw steal a centerpiece from a church event, and now she's giving me parenting advice. And I'll be honest, there were days I almost gave in. But then something happened that made everything clear. About 3 weeks after the picnic, Ethan came home from school. He sat at the kitchen table while I was cooking dinner. And he kept opening his mouth like he wanted to say something, but couldn't. You know how kids do that? Finally, he said, "Mom, am I bad?" I immediately turned off the stove, sat down next to him, and said, "Why would you ask that?" And he said, "Because Grandma doesn't like me. So maybe I'm bad." My 6-year-old son was sitting there, trying to understand what he did wrong. This kid shares his snacks with everyone, draws pictures of our family with big smiles on every face. Last week he said "excuse me" to a mannequin at Target because he bumped into it. And somehow, he thought he was the problem. I pulled him into my arms and held him tight. And I said, Baby, you are not bad. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. And sometimes adults have problems that have nothing to do with you. He nodded like he understood, then went back to playing with his dinosaurs, like nothing happened. But me? I went into the bathroom, closed the door, and cried so hard I had to sit on the floor. That's when I made my second decision. The first one was stopping the money. The second one was bigger. I decided I wasn't going to any family events anymore. Not Sunday dinners, not holidays, nothing. Until my mother apologized. Not to me, to Ethan. She needed to look that little boy in the eyes and say she was sorry and tell him she loved him. That was my condition, and it wasn't negotiable. So I called her and I said, "Mom, I love you. But until you apologize to Ethan for what you said at the picnic, I'm not coming to anything, and I'm not sending another $1. You want to know what she said? She said, "You're really going to punish me over a joke?" A joke. She called it a joke. My son questioning if he's a bad person. That was the joke. I said, if it was just a joke, then apologizing should be easy. And she hung up on me. That's when things turned into a full-blown war. Because my mom started telling everyone her version of the story. And in her version, I was the villain. I was the ungrateful daughter. The one who abandoned her struggling parents over a small comment at a barbecue. She conveniently left out everything that mattered. She didn't mention Ethan. She didn't mention the years of money. She didn't mention any of it. Lauren tried to correct people. But you know how that goes. People believe the first version they hear. My Aunt Susan called again. My uncle texted me. Family comes first. Easy for him to say. He's never paid a single bill for them. Even my dad called. And that one hurt the most. Because he's not a bad man. He's just weak. He said, "Melissa, sweetheart, can't you just let this go? Your mom didn't mean anything by it. She's been really upset." She's been upset. My son thinks something is wrong with him, and my mother is the one who's upset. I said, "Dad, I love you, but you were there. You heard what she said. You saw his face, and you took a sip of your beer. I'm not mad at you, but I can't pretend that was okay." He went quiet. Then he said something I didn't expect. He said, "I know. I should have said something." That was the most honest thing I had heard from him in years. For a moment, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe he'd step in. Maybe he'd fix it. But he didn't. Because he's still the same man. And agreeing with my mom is still easier. Meanwhile, Ava was watching everything. She hears the calls. She sees the tension. She watches me pause before answering messages. One night she came into my room and sat on the bed. And she said, "Mom, I just want you to know, I'd do the same thing again." I looked at her. My kid, hair in a messy bun, homework on her lap, nail polish chipped. And I thought, when did she become braver than me? I said, "You shouldn't have to fight these battles for your brother." And she said, "I'm not fighting for him. I'm fighting with you." Tell me that's not the strongest kid you've ever heard of. But what happened next? I didn't see coming at all, because someone in my family decided to get involved, in a way I never expected. And what my mom did after that made everything at that picnic look small. I'm about to tell you how she tried to turn my own children against me, and what I did when I found out. Let's just say, she finally met a version of me she had never seen before. So remember when I said something unexpected happened? About 5 weeks after the picnic, Ava came home acting off. She wasn't upset, but she kept checking her phone, flipping it face down. If you have a teenager, you know what that means. I didn't push. We had dinner. Ethan told us a long, confusing story about a lizard at school. We clapped anyway. Normal night. But later, after Ethan went to bed, Ava stood in my doorway and said, "Mom, I need to show you something, and you can't freak out." She handed me her phone. And my stomach dropped. It was a conversation between her and my mother. My mom had gotten her number, probably from my aunt, and she had been texting my 13-year-old daughter for 3 days. At first, the messages were sweet. "Hi, sweetheart. Grandma misses you." But then, they shifted. Slowly. Carefully. Just like she always does. "I wish your mom would let me see you. She's always been emotional. Even when she was your age, she overreacted. Maybe you could talk to her for me." She was using my daughter, trying to turn her against me, and the part that made my blood boil, she never mentioned Ethan. Not once. Not a single message asking about him. Like he didn't exist. But here's what she didn't expect. Ava wasn't just reading those messages. She was answering. And when I read what she wrote, I had to sit down. She said, "My mom isn't emotional. She's just done pretending everything is fine when it isn't. There's a difference." And then she wrote, "I'm not going to ask her to forgive someone who hasn't apologized. That wouldn't make sense." I stared at that phone for a long time. Then I looked at her. She was biting her nail like she thought she was in trouble. And I said, "You are the most incredible person I know." She said, "So, I'm not grounded?" I laughed and said, "No, the only person in trouble is your grandmother." Now here's the part where some people in my family say I went too far. And honestly, I want you to think about it too. I took screenshots of every single message my mom sent to Ava. Everyone. And then I sent them. To everyone. My Aunt Susan, my uncle, that friend Carol with the stolen centerpiece, everyone who had called me selfish. I didn't add any explanation. No long message. Just one line. "This is what she's doing now." My Aunt Susan called me. And for the first time, she didn't start by defending my mom. She said, "I didn't know she was doing that." And I said, "There's a lot you don't know, Susan, because you only ever listen to one side." My uncle, complete silence. Honestly, that was an improvement. Lauren called me laughing so hard she could barely breathe. She said, "Ava's my hero. I'm buying that girl a pizza." And she did. She drove 40 minutes just to drop off a pizza, and she brought Ethan a stuffed triceratops. Because in her words, that kid deserves something just because. That's the kind of family I want around my children. After I sent those screenshots, 2 full weeks of silence from my mom, because this time, she couldn't twist the story. It was all right there, her words, in black and white. Then one Saturday morning, there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and there was my dad. He was standing there in his old baseball cap, holding a paper bag from a bakery. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. We sat down at the kitchen table. He placed the bag down and said, "I brought those cinnamon rolls you used to like." And then, for the first time in my entire life, my dad broke. He put his face in his hands, and he started crying. He said, "I failed you, Melissa." He told me he heard everything at that picnic. He knew it was wrong, but he didn't say anything, because he's been afraid of my mom for 37 years, and he let that fear cost him his daughter and his grandkids. I looked at him and said, "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be honest." And for the next 2 hours, he was. He told me he always knew things weren't right, that every time I sent money, it made him feel sick, that he tried to bring it up once years ago, and my mom didn't speak to him for 11 days, so he never tried again. Then he said something that surprised me. "Your mom is scared, Melissa. She won't admit it, but she's terrified she's losing you. And she doesn't know how to fix it, because everyone has always just bent for her." And I said, "I know. I bent for 34 years. I'm done." He nodded. Then he said, "What if I stop bending too?" 2 days later, he told me he had a real conversation with her. He told her the picnic was wrong, the messages were wrong, the years of depending on me were wrong, and he told her, if she didn't fix this, she would lose him too. About 9 weeks after the picnic, my phone rang. It was my mom. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I need to talk to Ethan. I owe him an apology, and I owe you one too." I didn't answer right away. I let the silence sit, and then I said, "I'll think about it." Some people think I should have said yes immediately, but after everything, I needed to protect my kids first. Lauren told me, if she comes, it's on your terms, in your house. And if she messes it up, that's it. So I invited her over. The following Sunday. Just her, me, Ava, and Ethan. I told her clearly, come with a real apology, or don't come at all. She showed up at 5, wearing a dress, which she never does for casual dinners. She brought yellow tulips. My favorite. I didn't even know she remembered that. Ethan was sitting on the couch watching cartoons. He looked at her, but he didn't run to her like he used to. He just watched, and I saw it hit her, right in that moment. She understood what she had done. She walked over slowly, knelt down in front of him, which I know wasn't easy for her knees, and said, "Ethan, Grandma needs to tell you something. What I said at the picnic was wrong. It was mean. You didn't do anything wrong. You are my grandson, and I love you, and I am so sorry." Ethan looked at her for a few seconds, and then he said, "It's okay, Grandma. Do you want to see my new dinosaur?" 6 years old. No anger, no conditions. Just kindness, the kind most adults forget how to have. She hugged him, and she cried. Real tears, not the kind she uses for show, the kind where your shoulders shake, and you can't speak. At dinner, she apologized to me too. She said she knew she hadn't treated me fairly for years. She said she was going to start seeing a therapist. That one almost knocked me over, because she used to call therapy complaining to strangers. Then she looked at Ava and said, "I owe you an apology too. I should never have sent those messages. You were right to stand up for your brother." And Ava said, "Thank you, but just so you know, I'll do it again if I have to." My mom actually laughed, a real laugh, and said, "I believe you. Now listen, I'm not going to pretend everything is perfect. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. I still don't send money. That part of my life is over. My dad got a full-time job at a hardware store. He talks about tools and lumber like he's proud of himself again. Honestly, he sounds happier than he has in years. My aunt brought me a casserole once, and awkwardly said she shouldn't have gotten involved. Didn't even look me in the eye. I'll take it. My uncle still hasn't said much, but at Thanksgiving, he sat next to Ethan and asked him about every single dinosaur. For him, that's basically a love letter. Lauren still comes over every couple of weeks. Pizza, her kids, chaos. She's still my rock. Last week she texted me, "Day 147 of choosing yourself. Look how far you've come." I cried when I read that, but good tears. So yeah, that's my story. The picnic, the silence, the money, the messages, the screenshots, the cinnamon rolls, and the 13-year-old girl who stood up when no one else would. If you're someone who always gives, always fixes, always keeps the peace, even when it hurts you, you're allowed to stop. You're allowed to say, enough, and you might be surprised who finally stands beside you when you do. For me, it was a girl in a volleyball shirt who looked my mother in the eye and said, "Say that again."